Hello dear friends, welcome to this fourth and last part of the ABC of Git course that yet another channel for Tech brings to you. If you have been following the course, you may remember that in the previous chapter we went through the creation of a pull request. We started by checking out new branches, then introducing changes into those branches, and then pushing the changes to the remote origin to create the pull request to ultimately merge the changes in the master branch. But we mentioned that we still have something to learn in order to be able to survive in the real world. We have to deal with conflicts. In this chapter, we want to see what conflicts are and how to resolve that. For that, we're going to create two different branches and modify the same file in the same line, so the conflicts are generated when we try to merge a pull request. So let's get hands-on. Okay, what we're gonna do first is we need to check out a branch of master. This is the repo as we had it in the previous chapter. So let's check out a new branch. We're going to call that branch git checkout -b for a new branch. I'm going to call this C1 for conflicts. We have now checked out a new C1 branch with the content that master has now. We want to go back to a master branch, so let's check out master branch again, and we want to repeat the process of checking out another branch, a new branch off of master, but we're going to call this C2. So in this case we have two branches, C1 and C2 checked out, and both were checked out off of master. So the branches C1 and C2 have both the same content of the code. Now let's go to C1. Now we are on C1, and what we're going to do is introduce some changes in this program.cpp file in this C1 branch. Let's suppose the developers want to print a message to the console here and want to say hello, and that's all the changes we want to introduce in this file with this branch. Now you remember that we want to add the changed files to the staging area. Let's add with this graphical interface of the Visual Studio Code. Now we want to commit those changes, so I want to use the command git commit.m and changes to C1 branch. And with this, I want to push the changes to the remote origin. Obviously, if I use git push origin, it will warns me that the current branch doesn't have an upstream origin, so I want to use the git push with the modifier -- set upstream origin C1. Now if we come to our GitHub interface, it notifies that I have C1 branch with recent pushes. So let's compare and pull requests here, and we can see that what we changed was introducing this print align through the standard out with the message hello. And we want to create a pull request with these changes. And obviously, having created the pull request, we could go through the process of reviewing it. You can see the changed file here. You can interact with the developers and see what we saw in the previous chapter. We won't go over this. We want to go ahead and merge this pull request. So now we have in the master branch the changes that we generated through the C1 branch. Now let's go to the another branch we created, that is C2. And here in C2 we want to do the same thing. We want to come here and see that C2 doesn't have the changes that we introduced through C1 branch. Even the master branch doesn't have the changes because we haven't pulled the changes from the remote origin, but that's exactly what we want. At this point, this branch is not aware of the changes that we introduced through the C1 branch, and there's where the conflict will be generated. So we're going to introduce here the cout, and let's print the message goodbye. And with this, let's do exactly the same process. We're going to the changes files. We see that we we just introduced this new line. Let's pass the changes to the staging area, and let's use the git commit -m with the message changes to C2 branch. And now let's push these changes to the remote origin. Again, we don't have the upstream origin set, so with this command we can do that. And when we come here, we see that Git has detected that we recently pushed changes to C2 branch. Let's say that we want to compare and generate a pull request. And you can see now that we have a warning message here that says we cannot automatically merge to master. And that's because we have the conflicts. But let's just generate the pull request, just overlooking that message. And you can see that this branch has conflict that must be resolved in order to continue with the merge.
All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
What we do in these cases? Well, this is what we should do. We are now in the C2 branch. The problem is that master has changes with respect to the content of C2, right? Because we just did a merge of the content of C1 into master. Now master has some changes that C2 branch doesn't contain. The problem is not the changes. The problem is that the changes were in the same file, in exactly the same line, because we modified the line 4 of this program.cpp file. What we should do to fix this is check out master. We should use the git pull command that we learned in the previous chapter. Remember that this brings the latest changes from the remote origin in our local repo. I'm going to open this program.cpp so we can observe that in the line 4 it doesn't have any content, but when I pull changes, this cout hello will appear. Now we have the changes introduced through the merge of C1 into master in the master branch. Now we should go ahead and check out again the C2 branch that is the one showing conflicts, and now we should use a new git command that is merge. We write in the simplest form git merge, and with an space we indicate the branch that we want to merge with C2. In this case we want to merge the changes that are in master with the changes that are in our local our current branch. Let's say git merge master. Obviously it will warn of a conflict. See that we have conflicts in program/program.cpp. Let's open the files and see that it actually is showing me that I have problems because there are changes in master in the same line that we introduced the changes in this C2 branch. So to resolve this conflict, we should be very careful. In this case, it's very easy to see that we have two lines, the cout with the hello message and the other with the goodbye one. In a more complicated code base, you should be very careful, because if two developers are working in the same part of the same file, you might be introducing changes that are necessary in both sides, and you may want to preserve the changes that each of the developer introduced. Or in some cases, what other developer changed, you don't need that anymore and you want to replace the changes. It's up to you. You have to be very careful. So conflict resolution is a manual process. There is no automated way to do that, and you should know what you're doing in order to succeed. Observe too that Git introduces some indicator. In this case, this bunch of lower than symbols with the head message is the start of the conflict area. Then these equal symbols are the separators for the other conflict area, and then this part is the end of the conflict area. So we will have to remove this in order to merge the changes. Let's remove this, let's remove this, and let's remove this too. And we have the client code, but we also want to pay attention that we want the, let's suppose we want the hello message first and then the goodbye message. Here, as I mentioned, it's pretty simple because just 2 lines of code with printing a message is not a big deal, but please be careful in a real world experience because you might have to deal with a complex change. So let's save this. Now with this result, what we have to do is, you see that we have these merge changes here. We have to pass them to the staging area, similar to what we do when we have changes in a file. Now we use the git commit -m. This is normally if we were doing any other commit with the message merge master, and then I have committed the changes of the conflict resolution. Now I want to push the changes to the remote origin, and if I come back here to this pull request that I have, I can see that we have changes to C2 branch and then merge master, and then the resolution, the conflicts are resolved, and we can go ahead and merge these changes into master. Now if we come here to the master and we make a, I'm going to open the .cpp file. If we make a pull of the changes, we're going to see that we have the message hello and goodbye in the order that we established during the conflict resolution. Well, with this we have shown how to resolve a conflict. This is one of the most difficult parts in the basics of Git because, as you saw, resolving conflicts is a manual process. There's no automated way to resolve conflicts, and you have to be very careful in a real scenario, in a real world scenario, because you can have a complex code base and you may have different developers changing the same file in the same part of the file, and you should take into consideration the work that each developer is doing. So this might become challenging sometime, so be very careful in a real world scenario. So let's go very quickly over what we learned in this fourth and last part of the ABC of Git. We just went through a single command, that is git merge. Remember that we use git merge with an space indicate the branch we want to merge. The changes of that branch will be merged in the current branch. Obviously, branch cannot be the same branch that you have currently. Check it out. And well, with this we have covered the very basics of Git. You have now enough tools and knowledge to survive in the real world. Just remember to be very careful with the conflict resolution. That is one of the most challenging parts in a real world scenario with a complete code base and working with several other developers, with other peers. This might become challenging and you have to be very careful. Remember, as always, that if you like the video, please share. If you have any concern, any comments, any suggestion or question, please leave those in the comments. I am Diego. This is yet another channel for tech, and see you in another video.